First contact. The Grand Council chamber of the Velderan Alliance fell silent as a holographic display flickered to life in the center of the room. Grand Admiral Silara stepped forward, her luminescent skin dimmed with exhaustion, four-fingered hands trembling slightly as she activated the recording. "This is the final transmission from Colony Outpost Zenith," she announced, her voice steady despite her obvious fatigue. The gathered council members watched as the grainy footage showed a Velderan science vessel frantically broadcasting. Behind the panicked pilot, strange wavering distortions moved through space, not quite visible, more like ripples in reality itself. "They're here. The Harvesters. They've found us." The pilot's voice cracked. "Our shields are failing, energy systems draining. Please, anyone." The transmission cut to static. Grand Admiral Silara turned off the display. "That makes 17 vessels lost in the past 30 days. 3 colony outposts have gone dark." Elder Vox, the eldest of the council members, lowered all 4 of his eyes in a gesture of mourning. "How many lives?" "Nearly 8,000. Silara replied. "The Harvesters are moving faster now, consuming more than just our ship's energy. They're taking entire planetary power grids." The Velderan Alliance had known peace for generations. Their civilization spanned 27 star systems, built on principles of harmony and scientific advancement. Their vessels were designed for exploration and beauty, not war. They had no concept of weapons beyond basic defense shields. "Our scientists have no answers?" asked Counselor Thorne, her delicate fronds quivering with anxiety. Silara shook her head. "The Harvesters seem to exist partially outside our dimension. We can't communicate with them or reason with them. They simply take, and we have nothing that can stop them." An aide rushed into the chamber, a breach of council protocol that caused several members to bristle in shock. "Grand Admiral," the aide gasped, "our outer sensor array has detected an unknown vessel approaching Alliance space." The main viewing screen activated, showing a star map. A single point of light moved steadily toward their territory. "Is it another Harvester?" Elder Vox asked, voice tense with fear. "No," the aide replied. "It's a solid vessel, but unlike anything in our database, moving at incredible speed." The image shifted to show a ship that caused several council members to gasp. Unlike the elegant curved lines of Velderan vessels, this craft was angular and dark. Its hull was studded with what could only be weapon emplacements, and energy readings from its core suggested power capabilities far beyond Velderan technology. "It's heading directly for Lumina Station," Silara noted, referring to their largest outpost on the border of Alliance space. "Are they evacuating?" Counselor Thorne asked. "There's no time," the aide replied. "The vessel will arrive within minutes." As the council watched, the strange ship decelerated sharply, taking position near Lumina Station without approaching further. "They're transmitting," the aide announced with surprise, "in a form our translators can process." A voice filled the chamber, confident, clear, and unmistakably from a species they had never encountered. "This is Captain Nadia Chen of the Earth Warship Axiom. We come in peace and offer assistance. We've been tracking the dimensional anomaly to your region of space. We believe you're under attack by entities we call Harvesters. We've encountered them before. Request permission to dock and share information." Silence filled the chamber until Elder Vox turned to Silara. "Earth, is this a known world?" Silara consulted her datapad. "No record in our database. They're completely unknown to us." On the screen, the angular ship waited patiently. In the distance, sensors detected the familiar wavering distortion of a Harvester cluster moving toward Lumina Station. Elder Vox made a quick decision. "Tell them they have permission to dock. We need whatever information they possess." "And their intentions?" Silara asked. "No species builds a ship like that without violent purpose." Elder Vox's expression darkened. "At this point, Grand Admiral, we have little choice. The peaceful existence of the Velderan Alliance may already be over. Let us see what these humans offer. Grand Admiral Silara and Chief Scientist Corvin stood nervously in the docking bay of Lumina Station as the airlock cycled open. They had no protocol for first contact under these circumstances. The Veldarans had encountered many species over their long history, but always gradually, with careful diplomatic preparation. Captain Nadia Chen stepped through the airlock first. She looked almost Veldaran in basic shape, bipedal, with 2 arms and a head. But there the similarities ended. Her skin was a rich brown instead of the Veldaran's luminescent blue. She had only 2 eyes, and her body moved with a tension that suggested constant readiness. 5 more humans followed, wearing dark uniforms with insignias, showing a stylized planet and stars. Each carried small devices at their hips that Silara instinctively recognized as weapons. "Thank you for allowing us to dock," Captain Chen said, offering a slight bow. Her voice was confident, but not aggressive. Silara returned the gesture. "You said you've encountered these harvesters before. We need to understand what we face." "They're interdimensional entities," Chen explained. "They enter our space to feed on energy sources. Your civilization seems to be their current target." "How do you know of us?" Corvin asked suspiciously. "We don't, specifically," Chen replied. "We've been tracking harvester patterns for decades. They led us here." "You said you fought them," Silara pressed. "How?" "Our weapons pass right through them." Chen's expression grew serious. "The harvesters exist partly in another dimension. Conventional weapons are indeed useless. It took Earth 20 years to develop effective countermeasures after our first encounter." 20 years. Corvin looked stricken. "We don't have 20 years. 3 of our colonies have already fallen." "We can help you," Chen said. "The Axiom carries the technology to combat them. We can share it." Silara studied the human captain carefully. "And what would Earth want in return?" "No species offers assistance without expecting compensation." Captain Chen smiled slightly. "You're right to be cautious, Admiral. Earth seeks peaceful alliance and trade. Our history is complex. We learned to defend ourselves the hard way. Your civilization has resources and knowledge we lack. We can learn from each other. Perhaps we should continue this discussion with our full council," Silara suggested, still wary of these warrior-like beings. As they walked through the station toward the communication center, Veldaran citizens stopped to stare at the humans. The differences were striking. Where Veldarans moved with fluid grace, the humans walked with purpose and precision. Even in peace, they seemed ready for conflict. In the command center, Captain Chen shared detailed information about the harvesters, how they chose targets based on energy output, how they could be detected before they'd fully materialized, and most importantly, how they could be repelled. "This technology," Corvin said, examining the schematics Chen provided, "it creates a dimensional barrier that prevents them from feeding." "Yes," Chen confirmed. "It doesn't harm them. They simply move on to find easier sources of energy. But the emitter technology is complex, and deploying it effectively requires combat training." Silara frowned. "Combat training? Veldarans have no concept of warfare. Our society has evolved beyond violence." One of the human officers, Commander Reyes, raised an eyebrow. "With respect, Admiral, evolution doesn't help much when you're facing extinction." The council debated for hours after meeting with the humans. Some trusted Captain Chen's offer. Others feared these battle-ready humans might pose a greater threat than the harvesters. "We should inspect their ship," Corvin suggested. "Their technology will tell us more about them than their words." To everyone's surprise, Captain Chen agreed to the request without hesitation. "The Axiom is open to you. We have nothing to hide." What Silara and Corvin saw aboard the Axiom astonished them. Every system had redundancies. Every corridor could be sealed in seconds. The weapons control center housed technology the Veldarans had never imagined. The crew moved with disciplined efficiency, yet they weren't the cold warriors Silara had expected. They laughed, told jokes, shared personal stories. Most revealing was the ship's historical database. Human history was indeed filled with conflict, wars that would horrify Velderan sensibilities, but also with art, music, philosophy, and an insatiable drive to explore. These humans had nearly destroyed themselves many times, yet always stepped back from the brink. As they returned to the station, emergency alarms blared. On the main screen, the familiar distortion pattern of harvesters appeared, heading directly toward a small Velderan research outpost. The harvesters are attacking Outpost Helix, an aide reported frantically. 200 researchers are stationed there. Captain Chen turned to Solara. Let us help you. The Axiom can reach them in time. Solara hesitated only briefly. Very well, but I'm coming with you. As the humans rushed back to their ship, Corvin caught Chen's arm. Why did Earth really send you? One ship against such a vast threat seems insufficient. Chen's expression grew serious. Earth has been observing from a distance. We needed to determine if your alliance was worth saving, if you would fight for yourselves with our help, or simply surrender to fate. And your decision? Corvin asked. A small smile crossed Chen's face. I think we're about to find out. The turning point. Again. Commander Reyes shouted as the Velderan crew members scrambled across the bridge of their training vessel, the Celestial. You're still too slow. In a real engagement, you'd all be space debris by now. The simulation screen showed their vessel being engulfed by harvester entities for the 7th time that day. The Velderan crew, unaccustomed to combat drills, looked exhausted and demoralized. Lieutenant Mira, a young Velderan navigator, slumped in her chair. Our ships were never designed for this. We're scholars and explorers, not soldiers. Commander Reyes walked over to her, his expression softening slightly. My grandmother was a concert pianist before the First Harvester War. She learned to pilot a defense cruiser because she had to. You can too. It had been 3 weeks since the Axiom's arrival. Captain Chen had convinced the Velderan Council to allow human training teams aboard 5 of their largest vessels. The elegant ships now carried modified versions of Earth's dimensional barrier technology, their smooth lines interrupted by angular emitter arrays. Aboard the Axiom, Grand Admiral Solara observed Captain Chen reviewing tactical plans. The human moved with a quick confidence that still felt foreign to Velderan sensibilities. Your crew trains as if conflict is imminent, Solara noted. Chen nodded. On Earth, we have a saying, hope for peace, prepare for war. We train rigorously, so we'll be ready if needed. And how often is it needed? Solara asked. Chen's smile was thin. More often than we'd like. In the science lab, Chief Scientist Corvin worked alongside the human research team. He had never seen such advanced weapon systems, but noted that human medical technology seemed rudimentary compared to Velderan methods. Your people focused on different paths than ours, explained Dr. Patel, the Axiom's chief scientist. You developed technologies for comfort and exploration. We had to protect ourselves, first from each other, then from threats like the harvesters. Corvin studied a scan of a harvester fragment the humans had preserved in a dimensional stasis field. These entities are fascinating. They convert energy directly into mass, building themselves as they feed. No wonder conventional weapons are useless. Precisely, Dr. Patel agreed. They don't think as we do. They don't negotiate. They simply consume. As the 4th week of training began, Captain Chen called an emergency meeting with the Velderan leadership. 5 more outposts had ceased transmitting, and unusual energy patterns were forming near Veldera Prime, the Alliance's homeworld. The harvesters are accelerating their consumption, Chen explained, pointing to a star map. They're no longer attacking random targets. They're gathering specific types of energy in a pattern. What pattern? Elder Vox asked. Commander Reyes highlighted several points on the map. They're collecting quantum resonance materials, the kind needed to create a stable dimensional gateway. They're building a bridge, Chen continued grimly. If they succeed, they'll bring through a full harvester colony. This entire sector of space will be consumed. The chamber fell silent. The Veldaran Council had only approved defensive measures so far, still uncomfortable with the humans' combat-oriented approach. "We need to strike now," Chen urged. "The Axiom can lead an offensive, but we need your ships too. The Veldaran vessels we've retrofitted can generate a cascading dimensional barrier if deployed in the right formation." Elder Vox shook his head slowly. "Our people are not warriors, Captain. Perhaps we should evacuate our core worlds. Preserve what we can, while they grow stronger." Commander Reyes interrupted, earning shocked looks from the Council. "Each world they take provides more energy, more resources. Retreating only gives them time to build their gateway." The debate grew heated until Silura stood. "I have served aboard the Axiom these past weeks," she said firmly. "I've studied how these humans live. They don't glorify conflict. They respect its cost and seek to minimize it. But Captain Chen is right about one thing. We cannot hide from this threat." She turned to Chen. "How many Veldaran ships would you need?" "At least 4 with full crews willing to engage," Chen answered. "We can coordinate with the Axiom systems." Elder Vox looked troubled. "And if we refuse?" Captain Chen met his gaze steadily. "Then the Axiom fights alone. We'll do what we can, but I won't lie. It won't be enough." Corvin spoke up unexpectedly. "The humans could have observed our destruction from a safe distance, waited for the harvesters to weaken, then faced a diminished enemy. Instead, they came to help." After a long silence, Elder Vox nodded reluctantly. "You will have your ships, Captain, and crews who volunteer. No Veldaran will be ordered to fight." As the meeting ended, Silura approached Chen privately. "Can we actually defeat them?" Chen's expression was honest. "I don't know, but the harvesters have never faced humans and Veldarans working together. That just might make the difference." The Axiom dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the Calyx system, where sensors had detected the largest concentration of harvester activity. 4 Veldaran vessels, the Celestial, the Luminary, the Empyrean, and the Zenith, followed in tight formation, their once sleek hulls now bristling with barrier emitters. Lieutenant Mira sat at the navigation console of the Celestial, her hands moving with newfound confidence after weeks of intense training. Around her, Veldaran crew members who had volunteered for this mission worked with quiet determination. "Harvester swarm detected," announced the Celestial's sensor operator. "Massive energy distortions at the edge of the Calyx asteroid field." On the Axiom's bridge, Captain Chen and Grand Admiral Silura watched as the main view screen revealed their enemy. Unlike the smaller groups they'd encountered before, this was a vast, shimmering distortion in space, like a living storm of energy that bent light around it. "They're constructing something," Corvin observed from his station, analyzing the readings. "The gateway is taking form." Chen turned to her tactical officer. "Time until the gateway becomes operational." "At current energy consumption rates, less than 3 hours," came the reply. Silura studied the tactical display with newly trained eyes. "If we position the Veldaran ships here, and here," she indicated points forming a tetrahedron around the harvester concentration, "we could create a containment field." Chen nodded. "The Axiom will drive straight through the center, destabilizing their formation while your ships establish the barrier." "Risky," Commander Reyes noted. "If the Axiom's shields fail inside that concentration, we'll need to move fast," Chen acknowledged. She opened a channel to all ships. "This is Captain Chen. You've all trained for this moment. The harvesters think us easy prey. Show them they're wrong. Remember your drills, trust your training, protect each other." Axiom out. The human warship surged forward, its engines flaring as it accelerated toward the heart of the harvester swarm. The 4 Veldaran vessels moved into position, their crews executing maneuvers that would have been impossible just weeks before. As the Axiom plunged into the swarm, energy discharges lashed against its shields. Inside the bridge, systems sparked and crew members braced themselves as the ship shuddered. "Shield integrity at 60% and falling," reported the tactical officer. "Hold course," Chen ordered calmly. "All power to forward barrier emitters." The Axiom's specialized equipment began to disrupt the Harvester's dimensional integrity, causing visible ripples through their semi-corporeal forms. The swarm reacted, converging on the human ship from all directions. "They're adapting," Corvin warned over the comm. "The disruption pattern isn't holding." Aboard the Celestial, Lieutenant Mira watched in horror as the Axiom disappeared within the swirling mass of energy entities. Alarms blared as Harvesters broke off to attack the Veldaran vessels. "Remember your training." Commander Raya's voice came through clearly despite the interference. "Establish the barrier network now." Mira's hands flew over her console, coordinating with the other ships. The Veldaran vessels activated their emitter arrays simultaneously, creating intersecting fields of dimensional energy that began to contain the swarm. On the Axiom, conditions were deteriorating rapidly. "Shields at 20%, the tactical officer reported. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. Emergency containment holding." Captain Chen studied the tactical display, mind racing. "The containment field is working, but the Harvesters at the core are still stable. We need to disrupt their central formation." Celera looked at the readings from the Veldaran ships. The Empyrean's quantum resonators. They are calibrated to the exact frequency the Harvesters are using for their gateway. Chen's eyes widened in understanding. "If we reverse the polarity, it could create a feedback loop," Celera finished. "Force them back into their dimension." Chen opened a channel. "Empyrean, this is Captain Chen. We need you to reverse your quantum resonators and push to maximum output on my mark." "That exceeds safety parameters," came the worried reply. "The system could overload." "It's our only chance," Chen insisted. There was a brief pause before the Empyrean's captain responded. "Understood. Resonators ready. All Veldaran vessels, tighten your barrier formation," Chen ordered. "Axiom will execute a burst from our main drive to disrupt their center mass. On my mark. Now." The Axiom's engines flared blindingly as the ship thrust forward into the heart of the swarm. Simultaneously, the Empyrean's quantum resonators activated at reversed polarity, sending waves of disruption through the dimensional fabric. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a shockwave of energy rippled outward as the Harvesters' carefully constructed patterns collapsed. The gateway structure they had been building shimmered and twisted, folding in on itself. "It's working," Corvin exclaimed. "The dimensional feedback is forcing them to retreat." The swarm's cohesion failed as individual Harvesters began to withdraw, disappearing back into the dimensional rift they had created. Within minutes, the massive concentration had dissipated, leaving only scattered remnants that the barrier fields quickly contained. The Axiom emerged from the center of the fading swarm, its hull scorched and damaged but intact. "All Harvester signatures are retreating," reported the Axiom's sensor officer. "The gateway has collapsed completely." A cheer erupted across all 5 ships as the barrier fields were finally powered down. The Veldaran crews, who had never imagined themselves as fighters, had faced extinction and prevailed. 2 weeks later, in the Grand Council chamber of Veldara Prime, Captain Chen stood before the assembled leadership of the Alliance. The Axiom, repaired with Veldaran assistance, orbited peacefully above. "The Harvester threat has been neutralized," Chen reported. "Our long-range sensors show their remaining concentration has left this sector entirely." Elder Vox, who had been so hesitant to embrace the humans' methods, now stood to address Chen. "Captain, the Veldaran Alliance owes you and your crew a debt we cannot easily repay. You have taught us that peace is not merely the absence of conflict, but something that sometimes must be defended." Celera stepped forward, her luminescent skin glowing brightly with pride. "The Council has unanimously approved a formal alliance with Earth. We offer open trade, scientific exchange, and a permanent embassy here on Veldara Prime." Chen smiled. Earth accepts with gratitude. Our differences make us stronger together. And what of the axiom? Corvin asked. Will you return home? Not yet, Chen replied. With your permission, we'd like to establish a joint defense initiative. Harvesters migrate in patterns. They may return someday. We can help train more Velderan crews, share technology, prepare together. As the formal proceedings concluded, Lieutenant Mira approached Chen in the corridor outside. I've been selected to lead the first Velderan crew to train on Earth, she said with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Chen placed a hand on her shoulder. You'll do well. You've already proven you can adapt and learn. Before you came, Mira admitted, we were paralyzed by fear. Not just of the harvesters, but of changing who we are. We thought that learning to fight would make us lose ourselves. And now? Chen asked. Mira's skin glowed with newfound confidence. Now we understand that defending what you love doesn't mean abandoning who you are. The Velderans will never be warriors like humans, but we've learned we can be brave when needed. As they walked toward the landing bay where a shuttle waited to return Chen to the axiom, they passed a group of young Velderans eagerly examining a holographic display of Earth. They're not afraid anymore, Mira observed. Chen nodded. Fear disappeared when you realized you could fight back. That's the most important lesson we could teach you. Outside the windows of the council building, the stars shone brightly over Veldara Prime. For the first time in months, its people looked up at them with hope instead of dread. The lone human warship had arrived, and with it, the courage to face the darkness had been born.